Man, I tell you what, my intro gets me pumped up every time, man. It's a good lick to listen to. What is up, everybody? Lindy Endzone is in for the touchdown, taking the lead for the Philadelphia Eagles. One video or stream, that is, at a time. And I tell you what, yeah, it's been a quick minute since I did a live stream. My myself personally, but being that training camp is, literally right around the corner, on our doorstep upon us. I wanted to hear from the people, hear from you all that participate in the viewership of what's going on of what's going on in the live stream, as this is the training camp talk up. And as I say in the thumbnail there, it's no secret that the journey begins tomorrow of what appears to be a new look or new regime of the Philadelphia Eagles and all the changes they have made, stemming from last year between the coaching staff. And, well, now that same coaching staff gets a full year under their belt. They go into this season. They have a draft under them. They have new players under them. So there's a lot to compile together in really resetting the tone of expectation of what we can look forward to as soon as training camp begins. But of course, before we get into that, touchdown talk was a little bit. It had its rewind show with Joey Shakes last week. It was a kick-ass show between Joey and I, just catching back up from episode 13, and part of the reason in doing that was just the sole fact that episode was it was before the 2022 draft. And, us not necessarily knowing the direction that the Eagles were going to take. We knew they needed a safety. We knew they needed cornerback depth. The defensive line could use a freshen up. Offensive line-wise, we were in question as to whether Jason Kelce was going to return. And I think a little before then, the decision was already made. But we were still questioning about Fletcher Cox. And, well, they addressed quite a lot with very few draft picks. They only had 5 selections. They backlogged them, so to speak, between 2023 and 2024. So we have a lot of ammunition in the future, and, well, we're set up pretty well in the present time. So, with everybody, I wanted to refresh one more time, from me, and then talk to the people on, well, what I'm looking forward to personally in this training camp, and just go from there. Birdman, what is up, buddy? Good to see you in here. Yeah, yeah. Like I said to start the stream off, it's been a minute. It's been a minute since I did a stream by myself, but good to see you. Popping in here. But yeah, man, let's get into a little bit of news first. So, it was said today that the Eagles are planning to sign a former running back from the Dallas Cowboys who seem to have bounced between the active roster and the practice squad, and that would be Jaquan. Where's his name again here? Jaquan Hardy. Yeah, that's right. There's a couple of Hardys that I have to remember now, because there's one that's a rookie for the Dallas Mavericks who is he was kind of blowing up the summer league for a minute there. So now the Eagles seem to have or they're working on signing Jaquan Hardy. Nothing is set in stone yet. They plan to sign him. He is not official as of the moment until the Eagles make a post about it. But really, this is another depth piece that we're going to add at running back. We currently have 6, which really is it puts the Eagles in a little bit of a better position. Stemming from, well, we seem to think that there's three locks at the running back position when you consider guys like Miles Sanders, Kenny Gainwell, and Boston Scott. Well, now you're looking down the depth chart, and you really have three unknowns now. Well, it's going to be three once Jaquan Hardy signs the papers, but now you're going to eventually be working with three unknowns that, well, how are they going to stack up? How many running backs are the Eagles going to keep? Are they going to limit it to three? Are they going to add a fourth in there? I think most teams do keep only three unless the fourth is involved in special teams. And in the case for a guy like Jaquan Hardy, he has given the Cowboys both offensive snaps and some special team snaps. He contributed to 54 of those on special teams, and this is only across about three different games. Jaquan Hardy was involved in the unnecessary slaughter that was the last game of the year, where the Cowboys came in against the Eagles practice squad playing all their first string guys for the majority of the game, and decided to put a 50 burger on third and fourth string Eagles players. So I mean, all power to them, but it was too little too late to stick your chest out, because you ended up wetting the bed against the 49ers. So that was pretty much all for nothing to try and scare the NFC conference by playing the way you did against our practice squad. So but in terms of Jaquan here, yeah, I mean, he comes from a D2 school out of Ohio called Tiffin, to where, yeah, he does have an injury history, but it's mostly from 2018. So 4 years later, I think that sort of thing is behind him. There hasn't been anything notable up to that point. So safe to say that his knee is in a good place. Knock on wood, like we have for how many years with this football team. And well, last year we have seemed to our standards and watching guys get hurt, we have seemed to dodge a bullet with injuries that weren't necessarily all that serious, aside from the typical Miles Sanders, who only plays on average about 12 games. But Jaquan, I think that knee injury is behind him. And we're looking at him as a 5'10", 5'11" power back. He comes in as really the heaviest guy on the roster at about 225. So, everybody's going to be under the assumption that it's going to be a battle between him and Kennedy Brooks as that power type of back that we can add to our offense, with the likes of Boston Scott, Kenny Gainwell on the roster that, aren't really fit for that kind of style. That's not their style. As we know, Kenny Gainwell is the majority of his play is trying to find the little cracks between the tackles. He has very good receiver ability, so you already know, being that this is a Sirianni guy from a previous draft class, that he's going to want to utilize him as much as possible. And that kind of leads us into the fact, well, where's Miles Sanders going to be involved in all this? But before I dive further into that one, we'll go, statistically, we're stemming this off of college and, some limited NFL experience with Jaquan Hardy, to where in 3 games, he only got 4 carries. He rushed for 29 yards, but 22 of them came on one play, against our practice squad, which ended up being a 22-yard rushing touchdown. So if you take that out, he had 3 carries for 7 yards. All right, well, not the greatest on paper, but for a guy that bounced on and off of the practice squad to the active roster, and according to other Cowboys fans, he was 4th on the depth chart. So what was the ultimate expectation there? But of course, purposes change when you go from team to team. And being that the Eagles are in a position where they don't necessarily have a power back, and Miles Sanders doesn't prove to be that pure foundation back, well, the Eagles are looking at this in a way as to say, okay, well, if we're not in a position to bring back a Jordan Howard because of the injury risk, and we don't want to duplicate that when we're already dealing with Miles Sanders, well, maybe we can get just enough production out of a younger kid and take it from there, so we can still maintain the amount of carries that Miles can handle. Um, all this depending whether he stays healthy for the majority of that time. And as Birdman says here, this offseason was well needed. Buckle up. Absolutely, it was well needed. Whether it was the trading up for Jordan Davis, the A.J. Brown trade, Nakobe Dean being, the steal that everybody hopes that he is going to be for the Eagles. You got the James Bradbury signing to be that, to finally be that rightful partner to, big play slay on the opposite side. So you got two outside corners that you can work with, and everybody talking about, well, for the Giants they ran a lot more man than they did zone, and Bradbury's better as a zone corner than he is a man corner, and understanding that the Eagles had to do a lot of man substitution just because, well, they were losing the personnel that would defer them to maintain that kind of style. So I mean, across the board, we're looking pretty darn good right now. Birdman says, I think in relation to Jaquan Hardy that he sounds like a camp body. And that that very well may be true, Birdman, for all we know as of right now. But of course, like I said, the Eagles are planning. They're planning to sign Jaquan Hardy. Nothing has been official as of yet until we get further detail, until we get further confirmation on that end, whether or not he's going to officially be an Eagle. Now, it has been said, and this was an article. This was an article on NBC Sports by Ruben Frank. Shout out to Rube and Dave Zangaro for Eagle Eye, one of my favorite podcasts on here that they do. But it was said by a confirmation from a league source that Jaquan Hardy was working out for the Eagles Monday morning. No comments were made on whether an agreement was in place to sign him. But other than that, there is still a plan to bring him onto the roster for training camp. It was also said that the Vikings wanted to bring Hardy in for a workout as well, but this was prior to them learning that Hardy was planning to sign with the Philadelphia Eagles. Well, at least we can say that we're bringing in somebody who someone else has had interest in, and you got to imagine somebody like that for the Vikings. Well, it seems that it would add a decent amount of depth, knowing that they got Dalvin Cook, and they probably want to cycle some guys in there to help keep him healthy as well, because as far as Dalvin's injury history, it's not it's not the greatest on his terms either, much like we're trying to deal with Miles Sanders right now and playing a full now 17 game season, and it's unfortunate that he hasn't managed to do that to this point. Angel 3, hello. What is going on? One of my biggest supporters comes in here. Yeah, Angel 3 is always involved in any video or any stream that comes up on the channel that I'm a part of. So means a lot to have those kind of subscribers for your channel. It does wonders. So thank you for that. But yeah, I mean, this running back position is the position's going to provide a lot of intrigue, especially with us going in understanding that, well, Miles, in terms of whether him being a Sirianni guy or not, I think that's one of the instances where he's on the outside looking in. And, whether we like to talk about it or not, the cards are kind of stacked against him in a way. When he was drafted back in 2019, he was meant to be the number one back in this offense, a do it all kind of back that that mimics what we got out of a Shady McCoy. And coincidentally enough, they were selected in the same round, same selection, same area, pretty similar area that the two of them grew up in. And the aura behind Miles and being a teammate of Saquon Barkley coming out of Penn State, and and everything included in that. And it's unfortunate to this point that he just hasn't found a consistent groove yet. And unfortunately, injuries have plagued him and have become the biggest negative contributor to a lot of what he has wanted to accomplish to this point. And I can imagine that he wanted to be in a position where he's in a contract year, and I'm sure he was hoping to get an extension done to prevent it from getting to this point. So that's where you can say, in a situation like this, the cards are stacked against Miles. Realistically, he is really the only number one type of back on this roster, unless you take into consideration whether or not Sirianni thinks that a guy in Kenny Gainwell is capable of fulfilling that role. I personally don't think so, unless he turns into a Alvin Kamara type of back. But of course, this is only year two for Kenny. He has a lot to show. He has a lot of fuel left in the tank for us to really figure out what he's ultimately going to be. And being that you have a guy like that waiting in the wings, I'm hoping that this poses a positive pressure on Miles Sanders to show us who Booby really is. Run Booby run and all that. What he has built in this city here on the football team. And if we're being honest about this, Miles is very easy to root for. He has always shown to be that type of player. There's not necessarily a selfishness to his mentality. He wants to win as badly as anybody else on this roster that shows that kind of passion. And as we know, he has already been he's already been criticized for some of the comments that he had put out, that him feeling that this is an all-star team. And you're already seeing A.J. Brown trying to take that leadership role and calming them down. Like, let's show something a little bit on the field first to put us in that position to maybe say that we are an all-star caliber team. And, you gotta love to see that before training camp even starts. I've already seen AJ Brown, quite a few times on Twitter, and I think something was recently posted today where he was in. I think he was in an official Eagles store with a bunch of fans that had his jersey on. Everyone getting pumped up and ready to go for training camp around the corner. But yeah, I think that's ultimately where the running back position is going. I personally don't have much to say with Boston Scott, because we already know what we're getting in him to this point. He provides a little bit on special teams. He is good. He is good for situational play. I think to this point he's still dubbed the Giant Killer. Been plenty of occasions where he has shown that to be reason. But to this point, like I said, I think we know what we're fully getting in a guy like Boston Scott. And it's kind of those situations where, all right, well, he's kind of hit a ceiling of expectation and what he provides to that position on this football team. So there's really not much more that we can ask out of him. Good to see you as well, Caitlin. Thank you for stopping by. And Birdman's going here now. I was on another screen, going over the depth chart and that. So if I'm late to the party on some of these comments, you can excuse that. But Birdman goes, if you had to bet the over under that Miles Sanders plays 12 games, what would you bet? What would I bet personally? Okay, I would have to say that I'm going to be positive in this case for him. I'm going to show a little bit of positivity for Miles. I'm going to go with the over on this one. And I think it would be fair to say that Miles is going to play about 14 games. Knowing that we have the extra game in the season now, the bye week is a little earlier than the Eagles want. I would have to go back to the schedule to double check that. But I think if I'm all right, hold on. Let's before I'm completely incorrect on this topic. I need to look up the Eagles schedule here, just so I'm correct. So let's see here. Let's look. Make sure that I get this right. Their bye week 4, 5, 6. Because I thought, okay, yes, I was right. I was thinking in the back of my mind that their bye week was between week 7 and week 9. So yeah, the bye week is a little bit early for them. But aside from that, I think Miles personally has a little extra motivation, and in that case, I would have to assume that there should be some extra motivation there, because like I said, I didn't think that he was anticipating and coming into a contract year, although the although the MO goes with the way the Eagles like to work their team is that they're not trigger happy and wanting to give running backs contracts. For the way that the Eagles have, worked their offense lately, as we know, they run by committee, and Miles is just in a position right now where he needs to maintain that number one spot. Or, of course, you got a guy in Kenny Gainwell coming into year 2. He's going to start to breathe down your neck the more mistakes you make coming into this season. And as we know, to this point, he still manages to have issues that hold him back, whether it's the fumbling, the lack of concentration in some of his catches, the lack of pass protection and miscommunications with blocking assignments, and it's not just him. I don't want to make this into a Miles Sanders roast, if you will, because Boston Scott has the same issue. Kenny Gainwell's not going to provide you a whole lot in pass protection with blitz pickups if necessary. So, and I think that's what's ultimately leading in. And them looking at Jaquan Hardy is the fact that they don't have a slew of bigger bodies in the backfield that can help in those kinds of situations where, Hurts is working with the blitz, and you have if you're working in an 11 personnel type of set, you got your running back with you, and we have seen times where Miles is inconsistent with that. Boston has shown the same thing. Kenny Gainwell, as much as we love the fact of seeing him floor Micah Parsons in college, he's not going to do that. More times than not, he's not going to be able to do that at the NFL level. So that's where, and of course, it all depends on how well these guys do, but that's where a Kennedy Brooks and a Jaquan Hardy come into the conversation. If need be, if they need to pick up a blitz, then they're better suited for doing that. And that's not to say that Miles and Kenny and Boston are just completely not capable of doing so. They don't do it. They don't do it enough at a satisfactory level. So you would hope that guys like that, behind the depth chart, maybe we get in a spot where we're keeping 4 running backs and one of them has special team contribution, which we're going to hopefully try to avoid with guys like Devin Allen and Burton Covey, because special teams was the worst phase of that football team last year, and I'm sticking by that. I know I know there was plenty of games where the defense just made us completely barf, and I know there was plenty of games where the offense just looked as discombobulated as it could possibly be, with Sirianni in confusion, Hurts in confusion sometimes, not playing smart football, too many 3-and-outs. As much as you want to throw that on the table, special teams was an absolute disaster last year in terms of kickoff and punt returns. They offered little to no value, in terms of giving us a better benefit in starting field position or getting massive games, special teams touchdowns. There was nothing for us to really work with in that case. So that's where we currently are right now. And, I'm hoping that it's not going to get to the point where we're going to see Boston Scott out there again, that we're going to see Greg Ward out there again. Of course, they got to make the roster. And I think to this point, Boston Scott's probably going to be a lock if the Eagles have brought him back. There's good reason why he's still here. So, behind him, like I said, you got your Kennedy Brooks, you got your hopefully Jaquan Hardy, and then you got Jason Huntley. Now, Huntley does have some explosiveness to him. He's got a little bit of speed, but there's an inconsistency there in terms of his overall production, and I guess that limited him in a way to really seeing him in terms of special teams if they're putting guys out there like Rager, Greg Ward, and Boston Scott. So Birdman saying, if he doesn't make 12 games, do you still want him on the team? I think that's ultimately going to depend on the progression of Kenny Gainwell. Like I said, this goes back to the point that Kenny Gainwell is a Sirianni guy. Miles is still working, Sirianni is still working off some of the scraps from, well, not scraps, but you get what I'm saying, of Doug Peterson, where, Miles is a carryover from that regime with Dougie P being the head coach, who is now over for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And it sucks, it sucks to think of it that way. But really, I don't think it's a stretch to say that Miles is the most talented out of everybody in the running back core. I think Kenny Gainwell has the potential, to elevate his talent. I'm pretty sure that it's there for him. If we're seeing guys coming out of Memphis, seeing what Tony Pollard brings for the Dallas Cowboys and watching Antonio Gibson for the Washington Commanders, Kenny's coming out of that same backfield at the collegiate level. So to say that Miles is the most talented is not any stretch of the imagination. He was a second round pick for a reason. Like I said, this was a teammate to Saquon Barkley, and we've already seen what Saquon was capable of for the New York Football Giants when he was healthy. But of course, like I said, this is a position where Miles is kind of working into this in a regime where they're going to have their guys, and in that respect, regardless of equality from the head coaching perspective, he's on the outside looking in that regard, because he wasn't a draftee to Nick Sirianni and everyone else that was involved, minus the front office individuals like your Howie Roseman and maybe a little bit of input in Jeffrey Lurie, as much as he wants to say that he has less involvement. He tries to dumb that down a little bit, I think, if we're real on that. So, but yeah, I mean, in terms of Miles, that's what he's working with. Mike R says, I think they should trade Sanders. Well, I think the trading Miles would ultimately come down to a deadline decision. I don't think that's something that we're going to see in the midst of training camp. Unless another team is in a desperate situation where they just have a lack of talent at the running back spot, and if they get in a pinch where somebody gets injured, then they might try and penny pinch the Eagles in that way. But of course, in us using second round value on Miles and knowing that he has already proven to have quality production in the league, I don't know if they're going to be in a training camp position, to do that kind of a transaction. It would have to be, I think it would have to be come the trade deadline. But of course, a lot of that is going to be dictated on the growth and development of Kenny Gainwell. If Sirianni feels that Kenny can be a number one back in the offense that he wants to run with Shane Steichen, where we should see a lot more pass concepts, knowing that Kenny Gainwell, from a receiving standpoint, offers more than Miles Sanders does, then I think you can make a case at that point that it's probably okay in the long run to give Miles an opportunity elsewhere. I don't think right now the Eagles are in a position to do that, understanding that the depth doesn't look very good behind Miles. If you're not considering Kenny Gainwell or Boston Scott, the depth just doesn't look very good. For one, Jason Huntley has primarily had special team snaps, so I don't know how he would do. I don't know how he would do in this offense with the lack of experience, although he has been in the league 3 years. And two, you still have unknowns in Kennedy Brooks and Jaquan Hardy, so that would have to be a position of comfort in order for the Eagles to move on from Miles. If Kenny Gainwell makes a substantial development jump in showing what he can do at the running back position. And of course, a lot of this is also predicated on where Jalen Hurts is ultimately going to be as a quarterback. So yeah, I don't know that it's going to come to a point where they're going to entertain the thought of trading Miles, but I'm not going to eliminate the possibility. Birdman saying, I feel that part of Jalen Hurts' success this year, a major part has a V. Well, you'll have to elaborate a little bit on that comment. Birdman. There's a couple of typos in there, I feel. A healthy Miles Sanders? Yeah. Elaborate a little bit on that one for me, bud. Mike saying, I think with the O-line we have, the other running backs can do the job. And they most certainly could. But I don't also believe that the Eagles want to put themselves in a position where they feel that they have to be one-dimensional in the means of utilizing the passing game a lot more than the running game, although I don't think that's going to be the case, because me personally, their balance between the pass and the run going into the season, in my opinion, I think is going to be 60-40. I don't know that it's going to be a solid 50-50. I think they're going to lean on the run I think they're going to lean on the run to start. They're going to see where they're going to see where Miles Sanders is. They're going to find out if he can develop some kind of consistency, if he can handle the workload that he was given in the past, and put him in a position to get in rhythm. Again, this is a contract year for him. This is a year in which this is like his not a tryout, but not a tryout, but I'm thinking of the word for it, and I can never remember it. But this is his year essentially to take advantage of an opportunity. If this is one of his only chances in getting a nice extension without having to go through the tryout of proving himself to another team, then, well, the Eagles are going to give him that chance, but he has to take it and run with it. So I think in terms of that, I don't know if there's going to be a full I don't think there's going to be a full comfortability in entertaining the thought of Miles being traded, because Miles is going to ultimately dictate whether that happens or not. And he needs to maintain his position as the number one back, and and be the guy that gets the ball the most in key situations over a Kenny Gainwell, over a Boston Scott, because he's in a spot right now where he needs to reestablish some of that trust, not only on the field in positive plays instead of creating negative ones, but he also needs to stay on the field in terms of health. You can't keep coming into a season playing only 11 or 12 games, and then you get into a game where the team needs you the most and you're playing through injury. That's just not sustainable. That's not something that teams want to deal with their number one back. So that's why there's cards stacked against him right now. Jalen Hurts will have major success along with Miles Sanders being on the field. So through that logic, Birdman, you are saying that Jalen Hurts is going to have the most success if Miles Sanders is his number one back. That's what you're essentially saying. And there's really nothing wrong with that. There's absolutely not. Aside from the fact that Miles had 0 rushing touchdowns last year, well, you can't brush it under the carpet that he averaged 5 yards a carry. He's capable of doing that. I'm not going to say that he mirrors Saquon Barkley, but he's another one of those backs that, well, he's a home run waiting to happen if he takes the right hole. And we have seen this multiple times. I mean, he had how many during his rookie year? And, I still remember one of the runs that stands out to me the most is when the Eagles in 2019, they had to go up to Buffalo. They had to play the Bills. They had a really good defense that year. It was inclement weather. Carson was not able to throw the ball very much. Receivers were dropping the ball because it was wet. There was raining conditions. It was hard to throw down the field. And that was the game where the tandem of Miles and Jordan Howard was starting to gel a little bit better, because they were coming off of that. They were coming off of that win against the Green Bay Packers. And what does Miles do? I think he has what was it, like I don't want to say it was in the 50s, but I thought it was around like an 80-some yard touchdown run that, he just completely outran the Bills defense. Miles is capable of doing that if you put him in the right situations. If you trust him to take the right holes that the offensive line is blocking for him. And that's been one of his issues to this point, is his lack of a consistent vision. And if that's something that a Kenny Gainwell can show, much like the entertaining idea of, okay, well, we understand that Boston Scott can hide behind taller offensive linemen. Well, you're essentially going with the same idea for a Kenny Gainwell, only Kenny, amongst the rest of the running backs, provides the most from a talent perspective in being a receiving back. Miles is great in his own right, but he's inconsistent. Boston is good in his own right, but there's limitations there, especially when you're coming into a year or two for Kenny Gainwell, and this is the type of offense that wants to utilize that skill set and have it be a major contributing factor, to the game design in which Sirianni and Shane Steichen are collaboratively creating going into this year. Then you're going to want to use that to its ultimate potential. Now, of course, where does that leave a guy like Miles, where we seen that there was limited usage in red zone situations last year? Well, a lot of that ended up going to Kenny Gainwell, and and I don't want to put it like this, but I feel that an injury risk kind of led into a little bit of that. Well, what if he gets in a pileup or whatever, and he ends up rolling an ankle again, or so on and so forth, or much like when we watched Jordan Howard go through a knee injury and a nagging shoulder stinger. You don't. I wouldn't take something like that and run with it. I'm just speculating to this point why there was a lack of usage in red zone situations where we were seeing a lot more of Kenny Gainwell than we were with Miles Sanders, who was averaging 5.2 yards a carry. But yeah, man, about already almost 45 minutes in, and I pretty much centered around the running back position for the majority of that time. And we got shout out to y'all at the same time. Loving the interaction right now. We got 6 people in the chat. I'm sure there's plenty of streams. I'm sure there's plenty of streaming going on right now with other Eagles content creators. So thank you to all of you guys for hanging out with me and talking up some Eagles football in the major anticipation that everybody has for training camp, because it's right around the corner. It's tomorrow, y'all. Get excited. We got a new found air. We got a new found breath of fresh air. Just tons of excitement to look forward to in what to expect coming into this season with all the latest additions to the football team. AK Eagles Podcast, good to see you, my man. AK just recently had 2 bomb streams with Philly 500 and Joey Shakes as well. A long time friend of mine who is kicking it over on his channel as well. So be sure to pay him a visit. But so I don't continue to get repetitive with the with the training camp watching. As for about 40 minutes or 30, 40 minutes or so, I went in a tangent on the running back position. And as much as I want to talk about Jalen Hurts and the ultimate expectation for him, I think there has been plenty of conversation revolved around what we need to look for into saying that, okay, he's taken those steps that we wanted to see. And of course, I think it mostly comes down to him continuing to get used to the offense that he's playing in. I think ever since the high school level, from high school to collegiate to NFL, he hasn't been in the same offense consecutively. So that's one thing that's working to his benefit right now. But of course, he needs to use that benefit and exert it onto the football field to show us that that this is aiding his improvement. Um, and of course, the misunderstood or misinformed want to talk about the idea that he has a noodle arm and his arm strength is just not good enough for the NFL level. Well, that's I think that's a bunch of crap personally, because he has shown plenty of examples that he can get the ball down the field. But it's more about, like I've been saying personally, in my opinion, it's more about his timing and his anticipation in the pocket. Being more confident in the read that you want to take. If you don't feel that it's open, at that point in time, maybe it's going to in the route progression, that route is going to become open. Not initially, but if you just wait in the pocket, a fraction of a second longer, even if you have to throw a receiver open, which we haven't seen all that often from Hurts because he likes to play in structure. So there's going to be situations where he might have to throw a receiver open, much like we watched Carson Wentz in the past do the same thing. Granted, Hurts does not have the arm strength that Carson's got. Carson's got a rocket to him, not to the Josh Allen level, but that's the contrast in both starting quarterbacks that we started at one and went to the next. All of what it's primarily about with Jalen is seeing it, throwing it, and having the confidence to do so. Getting better used to reading defenses, timing and anticipation in his throws, maintaining his structure within the offense, trusting your playmakers, and just giving them good footballs to catch. Now, as we know, there was at least up to 10 situations last year that there was dropped touchdowns. Of course, this isn't primarily on the quarterback that we're talking about, but the type of quarterback with Hurts being a dual threat, and his idea in wanting to use his legs as much as his arm. Well, I mean, as we know, in this league, that's not exactly sustainable. We have watched Lamar Jackson have an MVP season because with his legs he just could not be stopped. But at some point he needed to use a little bit of that pocket quarterback type of mentality to show that he can be successful in both facets and turn a little more traditional instead of out of the box. And that's where Hurts ultimately needs to find a better balance. And a lot of that just comes from not just sticking to his first read and booking it when he feels the slightest bit of pressure, because there were too many instances where he would do that. So ultimately, those are the biggest things that I'm looking for in Jalen Hurts towards his quarterback development. But a lot of that at the end of the day is also going to stem on his receivers. Holy crap, a bunch of comments coming out of nowhere. Sorry about that. Yeah, no problem, AK. Appreciate you. Randall for Hardcore Sports coming in here. What's going on, buddy? He says, I see the Wheaties box. Yeah, the wife just finished the box today, and I intended on keeping it because the GOAT was on the box. Of course, who else would I be talking about other than Michael Jordan? But the GOAT is on the box, and anything Jordan memorabilia, I try to keep as much as possible. So that's why it's up there, along with the other, the other basketball stuff I got, or the Reggie White Funko, and the whole 9 yards. You guys get the picture by now. Joey Shake's in the building. Good to see you, man. 3 live streams in, and Joey and I just had our Touchdown Talk Rewind last week, so be sure to check that one out. The traction on that has been continuing to grow. It's absolutely fantastic. We kicked ass in that stream, so make sure you guys go give that a watch if you haven't. Joey says, I just want camp to start. Don't we all, man? It's tomorrow. At least we could say it's tomorrow. Don't we all? Tired of the Hurts talk of what he can and cannot do? Tomorrow starts if we are right or wrong. Well, it absolutely does. And as we know, when it pertains to training camp, the quarterback is one of the positions that benefits most when it comes to training camp, especially when you consider 7-on-7s versus 11-on-11s. Where, okay, yes, there is an internal clock and an external clock that the quarterback has to work with in 7-on-7 drills in order to get the pass out in time. Understanding that in 7-on-7 there's no pass rush. He's almost working against air. There's limited defensive coverage when it comes to the receivers. So ultimately, in a 7-on-7, the quarterback and the receivers are getting most of the benefits. So yes, in terms of talking about him him proving us right or wrong. Yeah, a lot of that is going to stem from those kinds of drills. 7-on-7, 11-on-11. Training camp is predominantly about the passing game. So communication with the receivers, consistency with their route running, getting used to the concepts that the play caller and head coach combined are wanting to implement with the new weapons that they have, such and so forth. And, a lot of that is going to dictate on how this final 53 will eventually be constructed, which, well, on paper, in terms of the receiving core for the quarterback, there's a lot to be excited about. And we'll get into that just a second here. Randall says, Kyler Murray's recently signed contract extension includes an addendum that requires him to study film for 4 hours per week during the season in order to follow suit of the contract. That's interesting. I'm not exactly sure why the Cardinals would have to almost incentivize that, because that that doesn't sound right to me, as in there's a lack of responsibility there on Kyler in terms of his growth as a quarterback. That's weird to me. And I think that's certainly something that we don't have to worry about with Hurts, but I digress. Yeah, that's just weird to me. Yeah, you already know MJ the GOAT. To me, MJ the GOAT. And Cheetah, what is up, buddy? He says, I am a believer in Hurts. I have his jersey for a reason. I believe he will break out as a passer and make us a contending team this year. And, well, on paper as it goes, I think that's what everybody is believing right now, especially when you got guys like Greg Cosell talking about that, in his opinion, in terms of the NFC East, he believes that the Eagles have the best roster. Yeah, that is a mouthful. That is certainly a mouthful. When, as we know, the Dallas Cowboys have held that title for quite some time now, and we always have to feel that the Cowboys are a measuring stick when it comes to this division, and we're always trying to play catch up to them, and those guys are the team to beat. That we have to do what it ultimately takes to sweep the Dallas Cowboys. Well, what if I told you I don't believe that they are the only team in contention when it comes to the division. I do believe Washington has a good chance of doing so, and yeah, call me crazy for saying that, because, well, when it comes to the division, Washington and the New York Football Giants have the least respect. When it comes to Eagles and Cowboys fans, they're the least respected. But when you look at what Washington and the New York Giants were able to do in the offseason, they have a lot of promise in their own right. So I think as a whole, the division is going to be, I think, through underrated intents and purposes, the division is going to be more more of a contention than we expected to. Carson Wentz, he doesn't have a lackluster core of receivers. McLaurin just came back. They got Jahan Dotson out of the draft. They have they got Mims. I can't think of his first name off the top of my head. But Antonio Gibson is there. Logan Thomas is coming back. Their defense, they've tried to maintain as best as they can. Ron Rivera's over there now. They got Jack Del Rio coordinating defense. So there is some stability over there. And as for the New York Football Giants, they're trying to hit the reset button with the coaching staff, and they bring in Brian Dable as the head coach, and trying to instill a sensible level of discipline to that team, and trying to unlock Daniel Jones, as as silly as that may sound to a lot of as silly as that may sound to a lot of people in the division, that's their ultimate look. That's their ultimate direction that they're trying to take. Yeah, Kenny Golladay was disappointing last year. He was battling through injury. They still have a lot to look forward to over there. They bring in a top selected offensive lineman. Kayvon Thibodeau was added to that defense. They're trying to get Saquon Barkley healthy. They're also trying to see what Kadarius Toney can finally bring to the table now that he's in a more clear mind space. There's a lot that each division team is looking forward to in terms of taking that next step. So I don't know if we're in a position right now to discredit every single NFC East team. I think that's unfair to do, knowing the level of improvement across the board that each team has done in their own right. Although I do personally feel that the Dallas Cowboys have been the most lackluster in terms of improvement. I don't think they're to the level of the Eagles, Giants, or the Washington Commanders. But of course, with the players that they were able to still maintain, and Zeke Elliott trying to bounce back, you got a Dak Prescott who's sporting a six-pack now, and he seems to be re-energized and all of that regard. So I don't know, but me personally, I still think it's going to be a two-team race at the end of the day. I see two teams over 10 wins, and it's going to be between us and Dallas. I think for the division, one game is going to separate the two of us, and I think the winning division team is going to have 12, the other is going to have 11. Now, don't be surprised if a team like the Washington Commanders inks out 10 wins, and don't be surprised if the New York Football Giants get as high as 9. I still think that they have plenty of turnaround to do in terms of brand new coaching staff at the top, and figuring out how they can improve Daniel Jones from a quarterback standpoint. But I don't think the NFC East is going to have a team this year that's going to be below 500. I think they're all capable of having a record above 500, but of course, that doesn't just stem from how we do against each other in the NFC East. That also depends on their opponents through, their other opponents outside of the division throughout the year. So, that's my standpoint on the division, and let me know what y'all are thinking as well, because of course this is training camp talk up, y'all. It's it's not just me blabbering on, as I always tend to think about myself, but of course it's about y'all's thoughts in the comments as well, as we get to AM Cheetah in the second part here. So he says, when I look at our roster, I see a complete roster. Wow, that is a lot to say going into this year. I see one hole, and that's safety. Okay. I also think Devontae Smith is going to fly under the radar of defenses because of A.J. Brown, and Smitty will ball versus the CB2s. Um, that is legitimate across the board to me. I think it's going to depend on when you talk about CB2s, how good of a depth our opponent is going to have. As in, when you look at the Eagles, for example, we're not a slouch at the cornerback position right now, since we were able to upgrade from Steven Nelson and you insert a James Bradbury, who's going to benefit from a more zone schemed defense instead of a man schemed defense. Hoping that Jonathan Gannon keeps it that way, and we need to avoid injury because that's a lot. That's a lot of what we suffered from last year. With the loss of Brandon Graham and how beneficial he made us in terms of run fits. In that defensive scheme and with other teams running the football. I mean, he was a big contributor in keeping the defensive line in line. So to speak, because that's one of the biggest. You're losing one of the biggest leaders. The communication is going to be different. Then you're leaving Fletcher Cox in a pinch where he's trying to work with somebody different on his opposite side. And, Josh Sweat is having to be over there. He's having to work with Barnett in some situations. And, that throws things a little bit off. So bringing back Brandon Graham, coming off of that Achilles injury. Now, granted, he's probably not going to have the same snap count, but it's going to be it's still going to be at a respectable capacity that he can still provide proper contributions. But put that aside, yeah, we're still in a good position. In terms of the hole at safety, I still think there may be one there. But I'm not going to discredit the potential that Jaquiski Tart brings to the table. Understanding that he has a better versatility than Anthony Harris does, to where Anthony is predominantly seen as a strong safety. He doesn't have the versatility to be flexed to a free safety. Jaquiski Tart has proven to show that. So he has adequate coverage skills. He is great in terms of being physical at the point of tackling. He is good in run situations. You can bring him down. You can bring him down in certain zone coverages to cover the tight end if necessary. I think there's a lot. I think there's a decent bit that we're missing in the signing of Jaquiski Tart, that he's going to prove more valuable than people think. That, oh, well, he's just another body. No, I mean, if that was the case, then you're not going to put him towards the top of the depth chart, and you would see a guy like Kayvon Wallace more on the field than you would in Tart. So that gives them flexibility in the safety packages that they can put on the field, where if you want to make it a combination of a Marcus Epps and a Jaquiski Tart, if you want to make it Anthony Harris and Tart, or if you want to try and throw Kayvon Wallace in there with that mixture, you're more flexible to do something like that. So I don't know if the hole at safety is as big as people project, but you can take of that what you will. Devontae Smith going to fly under the radar, and we already talked about that with CP2s, and a lot of that is going to be matchup based, of course. Sometimes they're going to want to take Smith. Sometimes they're going to want to take Devontae Smith out of the game. Sometimes the defense is going to want to take AJ Brown out of the game, and that's just going to put them in a pick your poison situation because, meanwhile, while they're trying to do that, they're forgetting that Dallas Goedert can still be on the field. They're forgetting that Zach Pascal could be on the field and benefit from that kind of situation. They could also put Quez Watkins out there. So I think that's the biggest thing. I think that's the biggest thing across the board is the fact that the Eagles were able to really extend their depth in a way that they can be more versatile across the board and giving defenses more than just basic looks and make it easier for the defense to dissect what they're doing offensively. That's the biggest, I think that was one of the bigger focuses going into this offseason, to where, okay, from a play calling standpoint, they want to be more flexible in the concepts of what they want to ultimately do, where they're not wanting to rely as much on Jalen Hurts, with these designed runs. Not that they're not going to consider stuff like that. I still think you're going to see designed runs for Hurts because he's just too valuable, as a quarterback in the run game. But understanding the upgrades that they made at the receiver position, you have to think in the back of your mind that, okay, well, they're going to want to throw the football a little bit more. So, yeah, we have a lot to look forward to. And compared to last year when they had to make a schematic change offensively and start to run the football and use the guys that they have, especially with that offensive line that just continues to be, number 1 to number 3 year in and year out across the NFL. Well, they're not going to want to sit there in pass protection all day. You want to get them out, use their athleticism to the advantage, and see more pancake blocks by Jordan Mailata, or see more geniusness that Jason Kelce is able to provide in switching the fits up, and understanding that whatever the play call was, that it may not necessarily work, and change some of the protections, or change some of the shifts on the line to better benefit the situation, stuff like that. Lane Johnson still being fantastic as a right tackle. Across the board, there's a lot to look forward to. And training camp is going to be the biggest revealing point, as well, the expectation that we need to set for this football team. Yeah, appreciate you, Burn Man. Thank you very much. ECG, Dante of East Coast Gridiron. Good to see you in here, man. I had a decent day, all things considered, for a Monday. Mondays aren't the greatest on people's lists when it comes to the work week. But I had I don't know. I had a spurt of energy today in which I wanted to do a stream instead of some videos, and I think it worked out I think it worked out in my favor a little bit, because as of late I haven't done a stream personally with just me, since Touchdown Talk has taken over that spotlight. But it was good to get on here and talk some birds with some people. Mrs. BG. Thank you. Good to see you. We're doing pretty well. Had some recent improvements done. to the house that I'm probably going to have to touch up personally. New windows were replaced. Getting some gutters changed out from a tree collapsing into the front of the house. So that's going to be done next month. But a lot of positives on the home front, but they are costly at the same time. But nonetheless, it has been, for the most part, it has been good. It has been good for the most part. Don't mind me. I do kind of get parched after talking for over an hour here. So half and half tea, you can't go wrong. Can't go wrong with half and half. Ooh, so I'll tell you what. An hour in, and I don't think we have touched the defense pretty much. So I'll get into a little of that for a little bit. Offensive line, I don't think there's much to talk about in terms of the offensive line, other than worst case scenarios of injury and how you would kind of shuffle the trenches, so to speak. So in terms of that, I mean, God forbid, Jason Kelce gets injured and he would have to miss a significant amount of time. Well, are you comfortable with inserting a rookie Cam Jurgens in there. I don't think it would benefit the Eagles in doing so. You're going to want to have to put him in a position of further development. I don't think, and granted, I understand that he was a second round pick, but this is a kid that's still learning the position. That's still learning the center position because he's a converted tight end. But he was, I don't think it's a stretch to say that he was drafted solely on his potential and sheer athleticism of an offensive lineman. Of course, this is the pick that our Lord and Center Jason Kelce. This is what he wanted for the team going forward, knowing that his time is drawing near. But there's still an appreciation at the same time for him being 34 years old, still as an elite Pro Bowl type of offensive lineman in this league. For what he has done for the center position, I mean, it just speaks volumes to the amount of elite talent that Jason Kelce has given this offensive line, alongside Jeff Stoutland being, to me, the best offensive line coach in football for how many years, and having a tandem like that, and having Lane Johnson and Isaac Seumalo, guys like that who have come and gone throughout this offensive line, and to still have some of these guys left over, carrying that torch and it for the next generation to come in. It just speaks volumes of the value that they bring to this football team. Midnight's Anthem, good to see you. It's been a minute. Good to see you. But yeah, so I mean, offensive line wise, I do want to see more of Jack Driscoll. I know that injury has unfortunately affected him. He has shown promise between the guard and the tackle spot. He is a favorite at Stoutland, so I do want to see more of Jack Driscoll. Jack Anderson is also intriguing. You're looking at LaRaven Clark, and you're hoping that he becomes healthy enough that he actually contributes in a pinch. You look at guys like Suo Peta who are still on the roster. That is another favorite of Jeff Stoutland. And then what are we ultimately going to see out of a guy in Andre Dillard who, we know that has bulked up for a potential cross training to aid in his lack of versatility between the left tackle and guard spot, knowing that his job was taken over by Jordan Mailata, and then you got Landon Dickerson taking Isaac Seumalo's job, to which Isaac had to rotate to the right guard spot instead of watching him play left for how many years. So I think that's pretty much all there is to look for in terms of the offensive line. Make sure that I'm not missing any comments here. No, I'm not. Okay. Yeah. I'm just paying attention and looking, and looking at the depth chart as I'm talking. So I got to cycle between two windows here. So yeah. And then I will say, one of the biggest offensive skill positions that provides a lot of intrigue for me is looking at this tight end spot. You got Dallas Goedert as your undisputed number one. That is the end-all, be-all. No one's taken his spot. Unless plans change in the future and, of course, all the God forbids take that away from him. But, you're coming into a year where you're not entering a season with two number one tight ends. Like I said, Dallas Goedert is now the undisputed number one, and he has a group of guys behind him who are trying to prove to themselves that they can be a number two or a number three in an offense that does benefit from 11 and 12 personnel packages. So with that said, Jack Stoll was the number 2 last year. The promise seemed high, the potential seemed high. A little bit above expectation with him coming in undrafted out of Nebraska. And then behind him, you got a Jalen Hurts connection and Grant Calcaterra, who is a pretty good athletic tight end in his own right, was one of the more dependable weapons when he came back to football, going to SMU. He was a teammate to Jalen Hurts at Oklahoma. And, well, we know the story by now that unfortunately he had to leave football due to concussion issues and further risk his health going forward with that. But now he's back. We'll see where he is from a training camp standpoint, if he has the potential to take over the number 2 spot over a Jack Stoll, which I will say it is going to be a challenge. Obviously, you got a guy in Grant coming in as a rookie, whereas Jack Stoll has already spent a year in this offense. So he knows from an offensive play calling standpoint, he kind of has an idea. He has a good idea on what to look for. He has an idea on what the tight ends coach and Jason Michael is looking for him in terms of that expectation. So Grant is still in a position where he's trying to get his feet wet. I think that's the biggest thing that he has to work around right now. So I think ultimately he is his own barrier in terms of training camp at this moment in time. So we'll see where a guy like Grant Calcaterra comes into the mix. And then behind him, you have Tyree Jackson, who was a favorite for a lot of Eagles fans. That unfortunately, being that he is trying to nurse back from an ACL injury, and then he had back issues. Well, it's unfortunate, but he is going to be starting on the PUP list with Brett Toth. Brett Toth, who is the number 3 tackle behind Mailata and Andre Dillard. So you're kind of working with that. Noah Togiai, JJ Arcega-Whiteside, and Richard Rodgers, to where I can't. I almost regret making a video on Arcega-Whiteside in which I feel there is a saving grace for him, but he has to be used a certain way in order for him to work at tight end. But I don't know if it's going to be enough to lock him in as the number 3. I ultimately feel that the Eagles are only going to keep 3 tight ends. And that's where I feel a guy in Grant Calcaterra has a strong case to be the number 3 and work his way to the number 2 if he is good enough to pass Jack Stoll. And then, that'll leave if you put Jack Stoll a little further down the depth chart like that, by 1 spot. But something like that would leave the door open for somebody else. So, so long as there's eligibility, if they make the practice squad and they have to be brought up to the active roster for injury purposes, or, if some kind of demotion happens. But either way, to me, it's looking like it's going to be Goddard, Stoll, and Calcaterra for your 3 tight ends going into camp. I think that is the strongest case that you can make right now, that those 3 are going to be the ones that make. I think that's going to be your overall depth at the final 53. But of course, like I said, we have to see what Calcaterra brings to the table. He's going to be his biggest roadblock. So we'll find out. We'll find out in that regard. See, all right. I'm just panning back. I'm just panning forth between windows here, checking for any comments before I continue. I appreciate the viewership, y'all. I really do. Still got 5 in the chat, and I'm almost an hour and a half in, and I'm just talking my ass off over here. For people that want to listen to me speak. It's it means a lot. It truly does. So I think we can finally head to the defense here, y'all, and put a bow on this stream. So in terms of the defense, where we have just as much excitement as we do offensively. When you talk about AJ Brown being added to the offense, well, there's just as much. Just as much as a bomb that was dropped when the Eagles select Jordan Davis and Kobe Dean, Kyron Johnson, who can provide an underrated contribution at the Sam backer position, stuff like that. I know people are intrigued by Noah Ellis as well, but I think a guy like him is kind of on the outside looking in. Josh Jobe could be one of those guys as well. Reed Blankenship, Mario Goodrich. So, but again, the premise stays the same here when you're looking at the offense and the defense. Depth, plenty of depth. But that depth has to work. And if it ends up working defensively, you can see how we were in positions, dating back to 2017 when you can have a rotation and keep guys healthy. That's part of why that defensive line was as successful as it was. When you're bringing in a Timmy Jernigan, you're swapping him out with a Bo Allen and Brandon Graham and Chris Long, and it just kept going down the list. And Derek Barnett in his rookie year, as much as people don't want to talk about him, yeah, he did contribute pretty well in 2017 in his rookie year. But of course, we haven't seen much of that up to this point, and people still question why he's still here. So, and of course, we go back to the defense. Go back to the defensive line here, and hold on here. Stat prediction for the offense. If you want to elaborate a little more on that, AM Cheetah, you're welcome to do so. That's a little bit vague to me. If you want to elaborate a little bit on stat prediction, are you talking about points per game? Are you talking about pass versus run? Yeah, you can elaborate a little bit on that one. But we get into defense here, and of course, we have the addition of Brandon Graham returning from that Achilles injury, and I touched on this a little bit earlier in regards to I don't feel that his snap count is going to reach the numbers that it was last year or the year before. I think he's going to deal with a natural limitation, of course, coming off of an Achilles tear. That's one of the hardest injuries to bounce back from, since all your explosion and lift off is on your back foot in terms of being a D lineman or any kind of pass rusher. You exert a lot of that energy from your feet in your lift off. So that's going to be tough to work around. And of course, we're seeing workout videos right now where it looks like the injury has never happened. So for BG to be as old as he is and look in that great a shape, that's just a testament to his dedication to playing the sport. But when you got guys like Josh Sweat and Hassan Reddick in pass rush situations, and if you want to throw Milton Williams out there as an edge rusher in certain situations, I don't know. I don't know. I ultimately think his snap count is not going to be as high as it used to, and that's not exactly a bad thing. So, okay. Individual player stats. Yardage for Jalen Hurts. So we're getting into that. Okay, all right. I can touch on that quick. I'm not one for individual stat prediction all too much. Although I did make a way too early one. For last year's statistics for Jalen Hurts, I did do that, which I came pretty darn close. If I do say so myself, I did come pretty darn close. Now, do I want to be part of the crowd that says that I feel Jalen Hurts is going to throw for 4,000 yards? See, that's kind of tough because recent history shows that the Eagles have had a hard time in doing so. If Carson was the last one to do it in 2019 with a lackluster receiving core. But that also makes the case for Hurts to do this because of the upgrades that the team has made in terms of wide receiver. When you got a guy in Zach Pascal who really replaced Ortega-Whiteside, A.J. Brown is A.J. Brown. Devontae Smith in year 2 is a scary thought for defenses. Quez Watkins is very good for utilizing his speed down the field. If the team is going to want to take more deep shots or just throw the football more in general. And I personally haven't done a stat prediction video for Hurts yet. So if I'm trying to come up with this on thin air, if I want to try and do this on thin air, depending where Hurts is from a developmental standpoint, depending on the overall health of the team, depending on a bunch of other contributing factors, positive or negatively. Understanding that, going in, the team is going to have a top 5 schedule in terms of last year's records. Top 5 meaning easiest. I think it's like 4th and 3rd between them and the Dallas Cowboys. But that doesn't include how teams improved from an annual basis. So with that, I would have to think Hurts should be capable of throwing for at least 4,100 yards. I would say about 4,100 passing yards. Of course, that's going to be ultimately dictated on how much he does or doesn't run the football through his own doing, or the amount of designed runs that the Eagles put into this offense in terms of play calling, what Shane Steichen and Sirianni ultimately agree on. But if you're going into a year like this where they made the improvements they did at the receiver position, and being that there is only one football and you're trying to get as many of these guys involved as possible, and, we're just talking about wide receivers. This isn't, we fail to include Dallas Goedert, who, by all accounts, to a lot of people, is a top 5 tight end in football. Well, if that's the case, and you feel that A.J. Brown's a top 10 receiver, Devontae Smith is on the upcoming in regards to that, well, that should only elevate the capability in Hurts throwing for that kind of number. Now, of course, you would have to respect that his rushing yards are probably going to be diminished a bit if you're going to put a bigger focus on throwing the football. But from a developmental standpoint, Hurts has to be to that level in order for that kind of success to happen. So I would have to say, if I had to put a stat prediction on air, let's say this. I think Hurts will be capable of throwing about 4,100 yards. I'm going to say in terms of passing touchdowns, he'll have anywhere from, I'm going to say he'll have anywhere from 29 to 32. That's just passing. And interceptions wise, the most interceptions I see him throwing is, I would probably say, the same as last year. Last year, I predicted he would throw anywhere from 9 to 11 interceptions. I think he finished at 9. I think he was, 16 touchdowns to 9 interceptions. So I will still keep it at that, knowing that he's going to have to take a significant jump from a quarterback's perspective instead of a running quarterback's perspective, knowing that, his completion percentage was only about 61% last year. He didn't throw the football very much. If he makes the jump that everyone hopes he does, and of course there is a high expectation here, I will leave my prediction at that. Would I make a video on it? Probably, just so people don't have to try and create a timestamp or go this far into this stream. But like I said, in terms of Hurts' capability, if all goes well, I think he should be capable of throwing about 4,100 passing yards, anywhere from 29 to 32 touchdowns. That's what on paper, with the amount of weapons that Hurts could potentially have, depending on how the 53 is ultimately constructed, I think that's fair to say as of right now. But of course, a lot of that is there's a lot of determining factors that's going to ultimately change that kind of prediction for better or worse. AM says, I agree. I see that. My passing stat prediction, he has 4,200 yards, 25 to 30 touchdowns, 5 to 10 picks, around 5 to 600 rushing yards. Yeah. So I think Hurts had a little over 700 last year in terms of rushing. Like we said, he was 16 touchdowns to 9 interceptions. But I think he had 10 rushing touchdowns, so you would put that as 26 total. So, on paper, the touchdown to interception ratio was pretty good. But if you eliminate the rushing touchdowns, then yeah, Hurts has some work to do in terms of throwing the football. BPS in the house, good to see you. Big Play Slay. Already a half hour in, and I tell you what, you guys are phenomenal. Yeah, the support is great. To still see that I have concurrent viewership right now, it's really awesome. I didn't expect to go an hour and a half. I thought I was going to be anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour, and then I get multiple tangents about the team and talking about the ultimate expectations going into the training camp. And it's times have changed. Times have certainly changed, and it dates me back to the live streams I used to do by myself before, where I kind of had a hard time really speaking my mind and putting words into the microphone, and I carried on too much. But of course anybody can get better at something with time, and that's what ultimately happened to me. 2 years later in creating this channel, and now I'm approaching 300 subscribers. It's quite a surreal moment. You take the little victories. You just take the little victories, and the big ones will come unexpectedly. I think that's the best way to look at it. Yeah, of course. Yeah, I know. Like I said, times have changed. I know. Yeah, crazy that I'm closing in on 300. I've been stagnant I've been stagnant, plateauing in the twos for the longest time. But it's good to see that number is going to change eventually. Yeah, right. Uh, yeah, like I said, you were going to take off. I remember when you were at 200 for the longest, but yeah, right. Yep. People who fail always succeed because they learn. Yeah, yeah. So long as you're not implying in the case of me that I had more failures than successes. But no, I completely get where you're coming from, because I mean, how much time later, and BPS is over, I think, 1,100 subs. So, and MG Nas has reached 1,000 in his own right. So that's yeah, that's just that's just that's just ultimately what time and dedication does. If you stay true to your craft, and continue to transcend your work, and everything like that, it just that's that's the ultimate outlier. So yeah, like I was saying, let me try and put a bow on this from a defensive perspective. And we talked about the defensive line, we talked about the potential at the edge rusher position, and us ultimately wanting Josh Sweat to take complete control when it's all said and done. There's a lot. I think there's a lot riding on Sweat's shoulders. In terms of being the guy at the edge rusher position. Of course, when it comes time for BG to hang up the cleats, you're looking at him. You're looking at an uncertainty in Derek Barnett. Wherever Tyree Jackson is going to be. Of course, you have your Sam playing pass rusher in Hassan Reddick, but when you break down the defensive end position in its own right, well, I think there's a better desire in terms of depth there. So long as you have those staple players in place, then you would put yourself in a better position, because we have to look at this. We have to look at this 10 miles. We have to look at this 10 miles ahead, as well as staying at the distance we are, understanding that, well, we're working with a limited time with Brandon Graham. We're working with maybe trying to elevate the versatility in Milton Williams, the development of Tyree Jackson, and Marlon Tuipulotu trying to get into the defensive tackle rotation. Uh, Guys like that. And as much as we kind of didn't put much of an emphasis on the defensive line, well, okay, well, if you take an extra look at the depth chart, all right, well, there's still some desire left to be had there, understanding the position that you are in when, okay, Fletcher Cox is only here for one more year at $14 million. Well, you have your replacement in Jordan Davis. You have your replacement for Brandon Graham and Josh Sweat. But when that cycle takes effect and those guys become your number ones, all right, well, who are you going to rely on behind them? And that's what this year going into next year is going to ultimately dictate. So we already know on the potential of Jordan Davis. We already know on the expectation of Josh Sweat. We already know the potential of Milton Williams. Derek Barnett, I don't know what's much. I don't know if there's much left to say. in terms of where he is. Cheetah, keep on the grind. When I first watched a live stream on your channel, I subbed instantly. Been for many months. Road to 300. Thank you. Thanks. Yeah. Almost. Uh, it's like I said, little victories. Um, you know, it doesn't seem like a big number. 300 in the grand scheme of things in content creation of YouTube. It's not a big number, um, but of course, it's all platform dependent. And being a Eagles content creator in a very condensed community of a lot of us doing the same thing, um, it it means a lot to know that I have plenty of dedicated subscribers like that. Thank you, Cheetah. Yeah, you're one of many that I'm starting to realize you're one of many. So it hits me a bit different. It does. It really does. Uh, okay, so yeah, with that said on the defensive line, like I went into it. Derek Barnett, really, you know, again, it's another punching bag I don't want to get into, Mister. It's always him. More personal foul calls, more penalties than sacks. I mean, we know the whole ordeal by now. When it comes to Barnett and how much of a disappointment of a first round pick that he has been since 2017. But the only hope to that going forward is that with a lesser role. With a lesser role that's not as defined, that doesn't have as much responsibility, so we think that he would perform a little bit better. And this dates back to the one of my biggest traction videos that I made. I think more so because of the thumbnail. But this dates back to Brandon Graham talking about that. Him discussing it over with Barnett, that Barnett has told BG he has unfinished business. He understands that he's in a position where the fan base is kind of against him right now. He has left a lot of meat on the bone, and he's just in a position where he needs to provide first round value. He understands that this organization, for whatever reason, by our account, has given him another chance because, people want to talk about it in a way that, that's Howie Roseman not wanting to justify his failures in high draft picks, whatever, however you want to spell it, however you want to paint it. He's still here, and we hope that, like I said, in a lesser role with lesser responsibilities, that he hones into assignments that better benefit him. That there's less pressure involved. He can get in a comfortable zone. Stuff like that. Again, it's just it's as hard to justify that means like it is for people when they talk about Jalen Reagor or Arcega-Whiteside, the unfavorite, the least favorite opinions, if you will, the least favorite conversations. And of course, Barnett is in that category right now. But of course, he plays one of the top premium positions on this team, since, as we know, with Howie Roseman in the front office, how much they value their trenches between the offensive and defensive line. That's a top premium position for this team, and understanding that they want to try and maintain as much depth as they possibly can, positive or negative. In this case, they feel it's positive to keep Derek at that kind of capacity. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. There's not a lot of expectation there, but take of it what you will. Then we get to linebacker. Okay, well, the position that caught everybody off guard, that the team addressed to the level that they had, with bringing over Kaiser White from the Chargers, getting Nakobe Dean out of the draft, the steal that everybody hopes that he is going to be. Kyron Johnson at the Sam. Hassan Reddick as your number one at the Sam, being that pass, that extra pass rusher on the field. Getting Kyron Johnson behind him to kind of mimic Hassan's game, and going across the board, having a healthy Davion Taylor again. Just what they were able to do from a depth perspective, and understanding, taking where they were and looking at it now. When we had a Nate Gary and an Alex Singleton and whoever else you want to throw into that mix that was more negative than positive, just like watching like a home being flipped, and you go from that before and after type of transition. That's what ultimately happened when it comes to the linebacking core for the Eagles. There's just a lot to look forward to here, and I think in terms of a deployment perspective here, it's going to be interesting. I think the Mike position. I don't know if there's a clear cut direction yet that the Eagles want to go at the Mike, with the potential that Nakobe Dean has to play that position. You bring back TJ Edwards. You have Sean Bradley, who has been one of the captain type guys for special teams. So outside of those three, I think Nakobe, and again, if he was projected to be a late first, and two reasons that he fell in the draft to begin with was, the speculated injury concern that a lot of teams had, with him opting to not take surgery on, I think it was his shoulder, stuff like that. That the doctors for the Eagles weren't they weren't concerned, like the medical team wasn't concerned about it whatsoever. Otherwise, he would not have been drafted by us. And it's still astonishing that he fell that far. So that's one thing. And the second thing is that, a lot of teams don't exactly like undersized linebackers. That he's on the shorter side, about 5'10", 5'11". There's teams that aren't going in that direction, and while it's a changing league in terms of not having that that Brian Urlacher type of linebacker anymore, it's a lot about speed and athleticism of getting sideline to sideline. Nakobe Dean doesn't necessarily possess a whole lot of that, but what he does possess is a commanding presence in which he can help direct his guys at the second level in the best positions. He is very good in terms of the blitz coming out of Georgia, and you can only imagine the fun that Jonathan Gannon is going to have if he develops packages where he and Jordan Davis are on the field at the same time. So is this to say that TJ Edwards is the clear-cut number one middle linebacker? I personally don't think so. I think Nakobe is going to give him a real run for his money in terms of being a starter. So I think the number one Mike has yet to be determined right now. But it is a good story. It is a good story to see an undrafted rookie in TJ Edwards, make the make the most of his opportunities. Oh no, no! My computer went to sleep. My computer went to sleep on me. My bad, y'all. I don't know if I went off the camera or nothing, but my computer tried to go into sleep. So yeah, I mean, I think that leaves it. I think that leaves it for linebacker. So to finish this off, I'll touch on the secondary, and and already talking about adding James Bradbury to to the other outside corner position. And you got guys like Tay Gowan behind them, Mario Goodrich, Reed Blankenship at safety, Josh Jobe. Zach McPherson, Jimmy Moreland. Again, this is another instance in where they're working with the benefit of depth right now. But of course they have to wean out the weak in terms of that depth, whether you can consider it that or not. And of course, this is another instance in where you don't want to misconstrue the definition of how you use depth. And as I have said before, depth is not about the quantity of players; it's about the quality of players that can play. That can play the position that they are in. Going down the depth chart. And I think the Eagles are in a better position right now when you talk about the secondary. Like we watched them claim Jimmy Moreland off of waivers. They take two undrafted rookies out of the draft that were, by all accounts, they were draftable players, according to gentlemen that have done film study between Josh Jobe and Mario Goodrich. Josiah Scott provides an interesting intrigue as a backup to the slot for Avonte Maddox. You can put Kerry Vincent Jr. over there. Jaquaski Tart for the safety spot. We touched on him a little bit in a previous comment. You got Zach McPherson entering year two, seeing what we have, out of him. But overall, and of course, we're looking at Marcus Epps, who we took from the Minnesota Vikings, him entering year three. And well, for what it's worth, Kayvon Wallace, trying to get something out of him outside of special teams. But overall, again, this is another position of trying to figure out what your depth is ultimately going to be, and it's a good problem to have. It's a good problem to have when you got this many bodies and they're going to be fighting throughout training camp, and the level of competition it provides. You're going to see these guys giving it their best to show that they deserve to be on the 53, and that just provides a lot from a competitive standpoint. It provides a lot from a standpoint of passion, and so on and so forth. So with that, and understanding that between the three levels of the defense, and how the Eagles were able to upgrade all of them almost effortlessly, if we're being honest, because of course we've watched Howie over the years try and go through the bargain bin of deals to assess the depth issue. And Kaiser White being one of them. I think Kaiser is making less than $2 million, something like that. He's using the rookie deals of Nakobe Dean and Jordan Davis. He's using more of a bargain deal with James Bradbury, and him making around the same amount of money as a Steven Nelson did, but you're upgrading at the same time. And then taking guys that were undrafted that were draftable players. So when you look at the whole scheme of the potential of what we could possibly have, there's a lot of competition here, and it's it's a good thing. You don't want to go into training camp thinking that you're set at every position, that there's not going to be competition across the board. And that's what the Eagles ultimately did. And it shows. So but yeah, so this stream doesn't linger on longer than it has to, since I'm already approaching the 2 hour mark. And I think I covered just about everything I possibly could without it being repetitive, and keeping the level of anticipation up when it comes to training camp starting tomorrow. Man, every single point we've discussed was, just top-notch excitement, I think. So, with that, I will leave it to all of y'all to have a good rest of your evening. Enjoy the rest of the entertainment that other content creators have to give you. But in terms of me, this was an awesome outing. To know that I can go for almost 2 hours to have as many as 5 to 6 people consistently in the stream is a breath of fresh air. It's quite fantastic to know. The level of engagement in the comments and everything. It means a lot more than some of y'all think. I'll put it at that. Just the journey that I have been on to make the necessary upgrades that I have had for the channel to make myself look a little bit better. Yeah, it means quite a lot. So yeah, before I get any deeper into unnecessary things like that, I will leave it at that. Appreciate y'all for coming out for the training camp talk up as it approaches us. The journey, the beginning of our journey with the Eagles for 2022 begins tomorrow. Pay attention, everybody. It is going to be an awesome ride. Of course, take some things with a grain of salt. Jalen Hurts throwing interceptions or fumbles happening, all of that. Those kind of growing pains are okay. Take some of it with a grain of salt. I think it's good for that kind of stuff to happen now instead of regular season games. So let's not try to blow a lot of things out of proportion, like other stories being portrayed about Hurts taking 4 sacks and throwing 3 interceptions. Let's not try and do a lot of that. All right, let's be a little more realistic and sensible when it comes to certain things. So I will leave it at that, everybody. Thank you for coming out and being a part of the stream and engagement, man. I'm out of words now. So with that, this has been Lindy Endzone for the touchdown, taking the lead for the Eagles, one video or stream at a time. It has been good hanging out with everybody. Fly Eagles, fly bleed green. You already know the deal. Take care of yourselves, everyone. Have a good rest of your Monday evening as the work week continues. Training camps tomorrow. Be sure to pay attention to all the Eagles content creators who keep you keep you up to tabs, or follow Twitter with all the beat writers who are there watching it all happen. And of course, that'll be it for me. Take care of yourselves, everyone, and I will see you next time.